Welcome to the future. Welcome to 2030. The 16th Fast and Furious movie is about to come out, kids are playing with slinkies again, and the earth is on fire. Lucky for us, it's still 2020 and I can't really predict the future. But I can look at projections of our climate from credible scientific sources to try and understand where humanity will be with relation to our land, atmosphere, and oceans. The Gen Z millennial generation is concerned about climate change because by 2030, those are the generations that will have the decision-making power to deal with the consequences of our actions today. Adulting, for us, could very well be figuring out how to deal with rising sea levels and decreased biodiversity. It's natural then that this generation wants to know what world they will inherit, and what state the world will be in by 2030. What will it look like, and how will our lives be different from today? Climatologists have worked for years on developing general circulation models to figure out how energy and matter will interact in 2030. It involves quantifying ocean, atmosphere, and land processes, dividing these areas into manageable grids and corresponding time steps, as well as using these models to hindcast climate patterns in the past to confirm their equations. Models are being constantly revised and tested to come up with the most accurate climate scenarios, taking into account the Earth's patterns as well as the size of the population and the changing economy. For some good news, the RCP 8.5 worst case scenario has basically been ruled out since our coal usage has decreased. Let's start with the worst possible scenario, because it's 2020 and we're still working on this optimism thing. According to England's chief scientific advisor John Beddington, 2030 will be the year of the perfect storm. Picture this. The Earth's population is 8.3 billion. 200 million people are pushed to the brink of starvation, with demand for food going up by 40% with world grain reserves empty. Energy prices have skyrocketed, with demand going up by 45%, but supply not keeping up. Demand for water has also gone up by 30%, with half the population living in areas of water stress. Greenhouse gas emissions are close to 450 parts per million, and shortages of food, energy, and water are raising the stakes for diplomatic international relations. Economies struggle to adapt to failing exports and rising debt. Countries with oil and grain are doing okay for now, but much of the developing world is going through a recession, and there are more failed states and refugees escaping the impending conflict. Remember that this is the worst case scenario and we still have 10 years to sort this out. There is also a best case scenario, written by Christiana Figueres, a former executive secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. First things first, there are still negative impacts. Glaciers are still melting and sea levels are still rising. There are severe droughts in the western United States, the Mediterranean, and parts of China, and extreme weather occurrences are becoming more common. Resource degradation continues to multiply existing disparities in income, public health, food security, and water availability. Right, optimism. Ideally, by 2050, we've succeeded at halving emissions for the past 3 decades. Cities have been transformed with the proliferation of trees, and carbon has been removed from the atmosphere. Monoculture, or growing one type of crop in a large area, has been replaced with polyculture to encourage biological diversity. Fossil fuels have been replaced by wind, solar, geothermal, and hydro, electric cars are the norm, and single-use plastics are obsolete. The Paris Agreement suggested that we work to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels to mitigate man-made additions to climate change. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change took that number and said, hey, what does that actually look like? In short, at 1.5 degrees Celsius, storms will still likely grow more powerful, oceans could become more acidic, and ecosystems will still change. The US National Climate Assessment predicts the sea level will rise about 0.3 to 0.6 feet globally, but society and humanity will still likely be able to manage. At 2 degrees, the probability of complete ecosystem loss, heavy rainfall, longer droughts, bigger wildfires, more hurricanes, irreversible melting of ice caps, and mass species extinction is virtually guaranteed. The Paris Agreement has already predicted that we'll hit 3 degrees by 2100. The domino effects of climate change are difficult to predict, but many scientists reiterate that we're better off being safe than sorry. Specifically, emissions need to go down by 45% of 2010 levels by 2030, and then we have to hit net zero by 2050. There is a projected 8 to 19% reduction in CO2 emissions from 2005 levels, and that energy use per capita is likely to decline by 9% by 2030, as we shift from coal to natural gas. These numbers could increase as policies for clean electricity generation, green communities, and transportation, as well as planting 2 billion trees over the next 10 years will get implemented. We also don't know how the global lockdown due to the coronavirus will contribute to these numbers. Here are some of my favorite green developments that we could be seeing in our future. Number 1. Floating solar arrays and wind farms. Hybrid designs such as Thailand's photovoltaic farm combines dam-powered turbines alongside floating solar panels, and is proof of hydrotech's untapped potential. It's even been posited by some experts that with the right amount of investment, wave power could provide up to 25% of US electricity in the future. 2. Solar glass. Companies like Tesla and Onyx have already developed solar roof tiles made of photovoltaic glass. They not only capture solar energy to power your appliances, but filter rays to regulate your building temperature. 3. Plant-based plastic. With Canada set to ban single-use plastics to combat ocean waste by 2021, bioplastics are being developed by companies that intend to have low carbon footprints in the production, distribution, and elimination of products. Bioplastics have been made from starches and proteins occurring in plants like algae and soybeans. 4. Smart grids. Smart grids are a utility network much like our power grids right now. The difference is that they don't simply provide power to homes and buildings, but they can actually receive information from your building about power usage and need. It measures utility communication for our personal knowledge and power companies to help manage and moderate energy usage throughout the day. Now, my favorite development in environmental initiatives is the move to a bipartisan understanding of the need for climate action. Common political narratives assume that climate action is dominated by the left side of the political spectrum, but recent years have shown that that may not be the case. A number of youth-led environmental and conservation initiatives exist on the left and right side of the political spectrum, and party leaders on either side are starting to take notice. 2030 could be a major turning point in Canada's ecological future and in the future of our planet. There are some ambitious goals to be met and a considerable amount of opposition with regards to climate action. But incredible technologies are being developed to combat CO2 in our atmosphere and limit emissions, and we could very well be seeing some of this stuff on our streets in the near future. What technologies are you excited to see in 2030? Comment below and give this video a like. Then come back in 10 years to see if we were right.